What are we expecting to hear from Biden? Is this an important year for him to give a proper State of the Union address?
Well, it's a very important year for Joe Biden giving the State of the Union because he is very soon presumably going to launch his presidential campaign. He is 80 years old. And it has struck me because I saw President Clinton back in the White House this week, to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the signing of the Family and Medical Leave Act. President Clinton left the White House 22 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
He is 5 years younger than Joe Biden is right now.
Wow.
And Joe Biden's about to run for a second term. And so Joe Biden, forget what he says. How does he say it? Does he come across as powerful? Does he come across as smart? Does he come across as on top of things? So it's going to be very critical alone for Joe Biden to do that. The second thing that is going to, all right, catch this now. The second thing that is going to blow up the State of the Union is the balloon incident that just happened between the U.S. and China. So I am sure the State of the Union is being rewritten right now to take that into account, because what has happened, over the skies of the United States right now is extremely serious from a political and a U.S. political perspective, a U.S.-China relationship perspective, a geopolitical perspective. So now that is going to play into the State of the Union on top of everything else that Joe Biden needed to accomplish, including setting the framework for the debt ceiling negotiation.
So this is the balloon you're talking about. Is the you want to?
Yeah, it's a reported spy balloon that's been flying
or
across,
weather observation balloon.
Yes,
according
according
to
the
who you ask.
Chinese, who continue to deny it.
The size of 3 city buses.
3 city
It's
buses.
not a small balloon.
It's been flying over nuclear sensitive areas where the U.S.
in
keeps
Montana.
the weapons underground. Chinese are still denying. It means that Blinken has now postponed his trip to China. So tying the two together, what does Biden do? He's already been accused by the Republicans of being too soft on China. You've got the Democratic base talking about race because of that recent terrible murder of Tyree Nichols. So you've got race to deal with amongst the Democrats. You've got China to deal with the Republicans. You've got everybody saying he's too old. What does he do?
Well, again, you've got to come out strong. You've got to come out with a very, clear messages. So he's going to have a clear message on the economy, how successful the Biden administration has been. Inflation is high, but unemployment is at a 50, I think it's a 50-year low. You have a great legislative accomplishments, including the Inflation Reduction Act and everything that's gone into that on clean energy, everything that's gone with infrastructure. So you want to talk about your accomplishments, but you have to talk about looking forward. Being tough on China is going to be one of those things. He has to be tough on China. I mean, look, my expertise on balloons stops on how you blow them up for kids' birthday parties. But I do know U.S. politics. I do know U.S. China. And like the people I'm talking to, and now we're in a little bit of an information-free zone. I mean, the people I'm talking to, in Washington, people who are going back into Beijing, but they don't believe that this was necessarily intentional at the political level by the Chinese to send this spy balloon at this time to send a message about Blinken's visit. But it was done, and that is what it was. And the U.S. has to respond. And so the first high-level visit you are going to have for U.S.-China in 6 years, canceled. The meeting that President Xi and Biden had in Bali is now, blown up. You now have a political situation in the U.S. where you've got this new congressional committee focused on China. You've got Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, who is going to go to Taiwan. So when everybody was hopeful that 2023 was going to be at least a floor being put under the U.S.-China relationship, if not a reset, it now is going to get worse, most likely. That downward trajectory is coming. That's going to impact the climate. It's going to impact business. It's going to impact Singapore.
Wow.
Just very briefly, because I read a debate this morning, they're still deciding whether or not to even shoot the balloon out of the sky.
I think they've kind of landed on not doing
Not
that,
at
right?
the moment,
because
yeah.
it would perhaps
where
injure
it is.
people on
yeah,
the
so
ground.
but they're still looking at this because of that Republican angle. Again, they're pushing Biden. Where do you stand on that?
Well, here's the 3 balloon experts and military
Yeah, I know.
experts talking about what the U.S. military should be doing. But I mean, I think one of it is what are you going to accomplish by shooting it down? The second is, and is this getting data that they're not getting anyway from satellites? So you don't know the answer. What is the potential for physical harm in the United States if you shoot this down? 3, can you shoot it down? What happens if you miss into the missile or whatever at this thing at 60,000 feet? And 4, let's not pretend that other countries aren't doing similar things in other places. The first balloon that went up for military purposes was by the French in the 1700s. The U.S. was doing this in the Civil War, North against the South in the 1800s. Of course, countries are doing this. So if the U.S. shoots it down, what happens when there are other things happening over China, over Russia, over Europe? So you really want to be very careful, and which is why, because it appears certainly it's not going to get shut down, you want the rhetoric is going to have to be ramped up by the United States to say what a problem this is. And you have had the China walk this back in a way. I mean, they haven't been denying it. They said this was a force majeure because the weather blew it off course.
Yeah.
It was never intended to sit over the ballistic missile sites in Montana for multiple days. But it did. And so at least maybe China's giving a diplomatic out by accepting that it is what it is, but we really didn't intend it. So hopefully the air in this tension will be released slowly. I have been on fire by it. Air.
I know.
I'm
sitting back.
This isn't your first. This is not your first rodeo.
Your humility, really.
Very good.